Okay. Excellent. We have a good crowd post-lunch. So this morning we went through early days, what's happening now, and what's happening in the future and with publishing. And now we have some case studies of different implementations of best-in-class metadata, and that crosses into both publishing and on the sound recording side. And we've got a group of really great innovators that are going to go through some case studies of what they've done. So I don't want to waste any more time. I think we've had a few little technical problems. Shocking, I know, for an industry event. But Janice from SOCAN is going to start us out, and I think we just have to kick this off. So thanks.
So thanks everybody for joining me this afternoon. I see some familiar faces out there, so hopefully this doesn't get repetitive for some of you guys. And I know it's after lunch, so apparently I don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to go through fairly quickly, and then we can touch base afterwards if anybody needs to talk to us. So Vicky, thanks for the intro. Vicky actually mentioned that I'm from SOCAN. I have been with SOCAN for several years, and I'll get into my intro in a little bit. But today, the case study I want to go through with you guys is our new organization, service division that we've launched called DataClef. And DataClef is, as I said, a service division, and we are actually in the business of managing back office services for anyone in the copyright ecosystem. And as we all know, if you've been in the panels, or some of you have been in the panels this morning, when you think about data and the evolution of data within this industry, it's actually come quite a ways. Now, I know that when I first started with SOCAN, my background was not in this industry. So when you come from a more regulated industries or different industries where the data and the management of data is more regulated across the industry, it was quite a shock to see what our data looked like. I'm talking about 14 years ago. And so I'll get into a little bit about that and some of the challenges that we see, but if you can imagine that the focus here for us is helping copyright anyone in the copyright administrator with the primary purpose of paying rights holders at the end of the day, this is where our focus is going to be in terms of our case study. So I've got a slide here that I've shown to a lot of people, and this is really just talking about some of the challenges in the industry. I don't know that there's anybody in this room that will disagree with some of the bullets on this slide. I mean, at the end of the day, whether registration of music or compositions or data capturing of anything associated with our industry starts with a publisher or a label, or music is made available through a DSP. At the end of the day, when you funnel that into the back end and you start to look at it from the perspective of rights owners, who should be paid for the consumption of any of that music, or helping publishers pay their writers, for example. How do you work with that metadata? What does metadata look like, and what do we have to interpret? So, at the end of the day, we're all looking at this from the challenges from the perspective of data. We're all looking at it from a technology perspective as well. Lots of technology out there. We talk about blockchain, artificial intelligence, and a lot of these different aspects, standards that we're trying to use to make sure we capture metadata in consistent forms. A lot of these things come to play. The question is, how do you pull them all together to be effective at getting the rights holder paid? And so this is some of the things that's in the foundation of what DataClef is trying to do. We also recognize that focusing on technology alone is not the solution to these challenges. It's just a part of the puzzle. And we live in a very complex data challenge industry. If you think of somebody, a group of folks coming together to write a song, they're not necessarily always doing it in a studio or being represented by a publisher. They could be in their garage, and they walk away and they go, "Oh, we just made a great song." And it doesn't get registered until months later, or they get represented by a publisher. Usually by then, there's still some disagreement within the group themselves to say, "I own 50%. No, you own 10%. So you look at this and you look at the ways that the data actually becomes available or is made available in a way that it can be processed, again, with the ultimate goal to pay all of those rights holders. So moving on to my next slide. For DataClef itself, we took a different approach to how we were going to try and help others within the ecosystem be effective at what they're doing. So we looked at uniting technologies with music identification data, and I want to emphasize identification data here to maximize what we're paying out to rights holders. We always believe in transparency. Whatever we get, whatever we process, whatever we make available back to the rights holders, they need to see what are their catalogs, what are their songs, where was it played, how much did I get paid for that particular consumption, and also helping them to plan their future, which are some of the tools that we make available and transparent to these guys. We have today what we call an extensive cross-industry identifier database. This is something that we have been building through SOCAN itself for over 30 years and have launched this information or made this information available in the DataClub world. This is a database where we have linkages between ISRCs, ISWCs, proprietary identifiers, different titles or different versions of a title of a song in different languages also. So pulling all of that information together is very, very key, because at the end of the day, this is what helps us to identify accurately who should be paid for the consumption of their songs. And we're always looking at expanding how we manage data and ingest data. We've talked about standards throughout some of the sessions, and I can tell you right now, across our ecosystem, not everybody can implement DDEX, not everybody can do a CWR file format. You have different players, you have indies who struggle, people who do not have the infrastructure to be able to put these things in place. So we want to make sure that we're in a position to ingest data from any format or standard that can be made available, because it's better to get the data in so we can process. Our vision, it sounds a little ambitious here, but our vision is to globally try to transform what's happening in the music space, in the rights management space, and helping people get paid. My name is Janice Scott. I'm the COO of DataClub, but I have been with SOCAN for about 14 years, as I mentioned before, 10 of those years as the VP of IT. And what we did there was a huge transformation on the technology, because I strongly believe in right-sizing or right-fitting your technology to the business problems that you're trying to solve. And that evolves around being able to be flexible, configurable, and be able to grow as the industry changes. And yes, we do have challenges within this industry. So how do you put technology into place to be flexible enough to do that? And I'll talk about that in a little bit. So just to introduce DataClub itself, we're a wholly owned subsidiary of the Canadian copyright management organization called SOCAN. We launched DataClub in 2016. We are a service provider under a SaaS model, or software as a service model, to organizations that require help to pay their rights holders. And I do want to point out that this is something we've actually been doing under a different banner for SOCAN for about the last 4 to 5 years. Within this area, what we provide in our services is, and by the way, this is just helping you guys to understand what we have done and how we've transformed a bit to try and manage metadata challenges and trying to get rights holders paid. It's not a sales pitch by any means, so don't think about it that way. We do data management and mastering solution. What I mean by that is when you get a registration for a song, and it comes from different publishers, for example, you got to pull that information together to get one view, one master view of the registration of that song to understand your rights holders and who to pay. So we do a lot of data management, mastering around catalogs, around usage information, and processing all of that to be able to get rights holders paid. We process billions of transactions on a regular basis, and from a sound recording side in our database, we have petabytes, very, very large numbers of sound recording data that we actually house and process as well. We provide a configurable, scalable, multi-territory and multi-rights solution to help with licensing administration or mandate administration, usage reporting, royalty tracking, and payment. And we do this, as I mentioned before, transparently. The information that we get at a granular level, we always make it available back to the rights holders so they can see where their information, where their payments are coming from. And we have several product lines as well. We purchased MediaNet 2 years ago, and MediaNet is now under the DataClub umbrella, and that's where we provide content fulfillment services as well. So we have several products under the MediaNet space doing content fulfillment as well as rights management, and we also, which is where we get the petabytes of sound recordings and things that we process, as well as our whole DataClub suite of products. So I'll talk about that in a little bit as well. But what we've actually done here is leverage the years of technology investment that SOCAN's made to use those tools to be able to provide these services. And again, the acquisitions of the company and the data that is available. Now, we're very careful with that data, and we make sure that we only use the data that is we are allowed to use to do the processing that we're doing. We are not a licensing agent by any means, so DataClef will never go to a region and start to set up shop to be a licensing agent. But what we will try to do is to help an entity within their location be effective at paying their clients. So I just have a couple of our clients there. These ones have been publicly announced. IPRS DucaPro is the Dutch Caribbean Islands, setting up a new rights management organization there. IPRS is the Indian Performing Rights Society. So we're doing back office for those. Many other clients that we have on the play as well. So just to go into our technology a little bit more for you guys, I talk about a configurable solution. We have a solution that would allow us to mix and match and integrate with different components of a CMO's systems that they have. So we can be very flexible with that. But we also are very flexible in the sense that we can configure our solution to any type of right for anybody in the ecosystem, helping publishers, for example, helping a rights administration organization as well. Just to highlight a couple of the key components of our infrastructure, we do have a private cloud. That means that we have internalized our solution on a very scalable, highly scalable private cloud for a couple of reasons. One is scalability, of course, but the other one is protection of the data. And when you're in a service provision space, you want to make sure you're protecting the data that's being used to run someone else's business. We also did that so that we can have a high percentage of uptime on the services that we provide, but we also wanted to make sure that we can retain and secure our clients' data, and we can give it back to them if the case arises where they need that back. We have a master data management solution. Again, this is where it is very, very configurable. I go back to the point of receiving data in many different formats. This is where the information is ingested into our solution. So whether it's DDEX, whether it's a CWR format, an Excel spreadsheet, I tell everybody we can configure anything but except PDFs. We probably have to convert those before we do it. But that allows us, again, to be very scalable in terms of the solution that we provide and also to the size of the client that we work with. We do have that underlying all of that, an ERP system that is not allowed to ingest any of the data until we've mastered it, cleansed it. And in the master data management space is where we actually look at all the challenges that we can see within the metadata. This is where we've applied a lot of rules, guidelines, that's driven by standards, that's driven by contracts, legal requirements, to be able to know how to master the data. And I'll talk about that in a little bit more in a minute. And of course, business intelligence is always important that we wrap around everything. You get the data in, you do something with it, you should be able to display it back and be able to use it for analytics. And with our solution, we try to make sure it remains relevant. It's very important to have a solution that you can keep current, upgraded, and being able to provide services as needed. Just a little bit more on the strategy around systems, the MDM, getting into the data a little bit. So we always look at getting the data from the trusted source. A couple of panels before this, Ter Bosno, who works for me as well, talked about accuracy of the data. It goes back again to the guiding principles around how the data is being provided to us in whatever format that helps to guide that. We have over 30 years of experience on big data analytics within this industry. So we have been able to look at rules, guidelines, and analyze the data in many different ways and forms to know how to cleanse and how to make sure that the data is accurate. When you pay a rights holder, you have to make sure that you're paying it accurately. Downstream effect of that is very cost prohibitive for any rights management organization where you're trying to resolve conflicts or you're trying to take money from one party and pay it to the right party. You have to try to prevent that as much as you possibly can. We always master the information and we always get everything back to the original song. So we want to make sure that if it's sound recordings, X number of sound recordings, we always make sure that that's linked back to the original song. When we get the different data from different players, we build that copyright picture and that rights owner picture and associate it back to the song. So whether another sound recording comes in, we are always able to go back and identify who should be paid. And we also do continuous data ingestion. So we're always taking data in, we're always managing that data, cleansing it, preparing it, and aggregating the information, again, based on the players. ERP side of things, just very quickly, it's a multi-everything solution. We have to make sure that multi-territory, multi-rights is very well taken care of, that the data is represented from an agreements-based perspective, because those contracts and those agreements also drive what and who you're paying at a point in time. So everything is date sensitive, so we can continue to capture the information and retain it into the system and apply it at the appropriate time. And we definitely segregate the data, so every client we have has their own tenancy within our solution. So some of the data challenges that we've seen, and there's lots. There's a lot of panels that talked this morning about where the information is coming from, but what we see when we get the data in is we do get incomplete data. We do get inaccurate data. And I go back to the whole idea of the rules and the guidelines that are provided and the analytics that's happened over several years to understand where that data is. We do get our data from trusted sources. So we do get data from publishers. We do get data from labels. We ensure that that's where the source of the information is coming from before we would make it available to be used elsewhere in the solution. So we know we have to process accurate and authoritative data to pay accurately, but we also know that from a technology perspective, there are legacy systems. There are some legacy systems out there that do struggle with the data as it should be represented today. When you think of, as I said, the agreements-based structure, we've gone from an industry that had a couple of right types to over 15 right types. Legacy systems will be able to handle a couple of them. Now they have to handle a lot more. So what are the things that they need to do to be able to keep up with that? So that's part of what you have to look at and assess when you're pulling the information and the data together. And of course, we talked about standards again. So new standards are moving in the right direction. We feel it is definitely moving in the right direction. SOCAN has been an advocate for a number of these. We've participated with OMI. We've been a huge supporter of DDEX, both on the board as well as I was SOCAN's rep when DDEX started up. That's the first time I met Mark Isherwood. Mark, you're on the spot a lot today, sorry. But having been involved in there, the idea here is always to advocate for and support what's needed to drive these standards to help us get the information at the time of creation through the value chain, but it's not always there. So we have to make sure that we pull those pieces together. So how have we looked at some of these, or what we think are some of the things that should be addressed to help us? And I'm just going to wrap up in a couple minutes here. First of all, we have to resolve some of our legal barriers. We've heard lots of different conversations this morning so far. But when you look at legacy contracts, that either dictates how the data is being used or even the structure of the data around the agreements, those are things that prevents us from being able to share the information on a global level. So we have to start to look at some of those things and see how that can be influenced. We do recognize that the data is complex. It's not impossible, it's not complicated, it's just complex. And when you get information from different sources, when you think of the affiliations or ownerships or exploitations, all those components that have to come together, you have to know how to interpret that within a multi-territory and a multi-right scenario at a point in time and represent the data that way, again, so the rights holder gets paid at the end of the day. And leveraging referential data, that goes back to those identifiers I talked about earlier. We have in our database roughly 27 million works that has 22 million ISWCs, industry standard work codes associated with that. We have a database of 78 million sound recordings that have been whittled down to about 45 million unique ISRCs, the recording codes. We've linked those two together to the tune of about 22 million, and continuing to do that because it's very important to continue to put that information together. That database includes proprietary IDs that we get as well, and our primary goal for this data is really, again, matching usage back to a song to identify who should be paid. So again, we've put a lot of work and effort into ensuring that that data is clean, accurate, pulled together for those purposes. So again, getting back to the original song, I kind of talked about that a little bit already, the different players that are involved. When you get the data coming in different formats, you're getting different pieces from different players. You have to be able to interpret that and build it all together to get that true share picture. And you have to have technology that appreciates complexities within that data and know how to establish that technology in a way that it continues to grow and expand or shift as the data changes as well. And I can't emphasize it enough, you've got to protect the data, right? And in protection, it's around what you're doing for a client or that data is made available for you to actually do with it. So just to wrap, what's next for DataClub? Obviously, as I said, we're a service provider, but this is not a marketing pitch, but our goal is really to help anybody within any part of the ecosystem, and we're not necessarily focused only on music, but we want to be able to help get the right rights holders paid at the end of the day. So we're having a lot of our solutions being able to do that. We are open to partnerships in expanding our service offerings to clients. And I just also want to mention that we continue to always invest in R&D. So we've done research in blockchain, both on the licensing side as well as the registration side. Artificial intelligence is something that we have a few products coming out there. We've done a lot of work in artificial intelligence with the University of Toronto. So we have some products coming out in that space as well around matching and identification and a few other things as well. Because one thing that AI helps us with is any of the unstructured social media data or things on YouTube that can't be identified, for example, where rights holders need to get paid. So we're continuing to invest in those spaces as well. And machine learning, the same thing, Internet of Things, and a few others. I could go on, but I think these other folks would like to have a chance to speak as well and not bore you anymore. And so that's it for me. Thank you for the opportunity. I'll be around for today and part of tomorrow if anybody wants to talk. Myself and Tara Bosner will be available to have a chat. So thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Janice. And now we've got CD Baby and Exactuals. And we are going to try to keep this at 10 minutes, so I may flag you over here when you've got 2 minutes left or something.
Please do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, can you unplug me? I'll get out of here. Thanks.
It works. All right. I'm Chris McMurtry. I'm head of music product for Exactuals. Thank you so much for attending. One quick note. This music biz has been incredible. It really seems like this year is where the rubber meets the road. I'm looking for Bill Wilson. He has to be really proud to know that what he's, kind of started has really resulted in a lot of change and a lot of great products that are making a difference in metadata. But I'm honored to be joined by the wonderful Miss Kelly Jones. Everyone in this room already knows how incredibly committed CD Baby is to serving the independent artists and labels. And it really shows in the investments that you're making in technology as well, both internally and externally. And we're honored to be a part of that. So thank you. But if you don't know Exactuals, Exactuals is a payments company. We're based out of LA. We process billions of dollars in payments in the entertainment space through our flagship product we call Payment Hub. But we're actually, if I can make the slide advance, talking about a product we launched last year here at MusicBiz. This second product is led by our amazing team here in Nashville, and we call it Ray, or Royalties.ai. It's a matching technology that cleans and enhances metadata using machine learning to confer consensus across various data sources. If Payment Hub is in charge of the payments, Ray helps you know who to pay, essentially. So, as well as to attribute both across works and recordings. So far since last MusicBiz, quick update, Ray has been used to clean over 2.3 million tracks, adding nearly 7 million new data points and generated over 28 million authoritative links and growing between 73 million ISRCs and 12 million ISWCs. So we're pretty excited about that. But what we'll be doing during this short time, in less than 10 minutes, is to quickly look at how we're doing that. I think it's important to dig into how. And then Kelly and I thought it'd be fun to look at some of the unique findings that we've come across in our work together. So part of what I think you'll see in this presentation is the importance of the human element to AI or machine learning. We like to call that subject matter expertise, of which there's a lot of that in this room. But with machine learning, it's important to have that element. And it's that combination that allows data cleansing and efficient payments to scale. So very quickly with our use cases, the way folks have been using us is if for a catalog enhancement, there's a lot of data sources, a lot of databases out there. How do you match that together and provide consensus? And then with catalog acquisitions, it could be master recording, needs to know all the publishing information, or maybe you're a publisher and you want to know what are all the cover songs or baby lullaby versions of my music that's out there. And then, of course, we're matching to best known good data, which we'll get into very quickly. And that's great for quality control for distribution and meeting the Apple spec or the Spotify spec within that. So with CD Baby, it's really those three things: creating consensus, removing the headache of manual metadata transformation, and then automating that quality control. All right, so how? So Ray, our mission statement is to perfect data. If you want to read that as perfect data, that's quite all right. But we do that by, we receive, match, and then we return data. So we source metadata from a variety of partners and sources, and then of course our clients give us data as well because they want better data back. It could be cleaner data, it could be more data. With that data, we immediately match that to our best known good data. That is the resolved data, the data post AI, if you will. And then we return that via our public API. That is an open API. Anyone can use it. Go to royalties.ai and jam away. Then with our client data, the very first thing we do is we match to that best known good data. We actually do some pre-processing through parsing. If you reduce the batch size, you're going to have a higher match rate. And so after that has been matched, anything that didn't get matched gets queued up into our what we call RayOps, which is our internal portal. And then we use a series of rules, a rules engine, to basically fix and clean up any data that didn't match. And then that gets added both to the client delivery and back to the best known good data. So that becomes stronger and stronger over time. And then there are also a series of rules that we would flag and then return to our customers where we receive their input within that. We receive multiple inputs. We would love for you to use our API, but we also have various known templates, like the Orchard template, for example, and then any new templates, and then, of course, CWR. I just went through this process, but we match the best known good data, and then we return as well. So I went through that as quickly as I could. Happy to dig in more, but really to the important stuff, I'd love to talk about how we've been working together and some of the anomalies that you initially found from the what Ray outputted, and then those scenarios to where we dug in deeper, we provided your input, and then some surprises where what the algorithm outputted was actually correct, right?
Absolutely. So when we started this project, CD Baby was looking to look at some of our legacy data. We have a catalog that spans 20 years, so metadata needs have changed radically since we started doing this. So we're looking to clean up some of our old metadata and just see what's out there. So we threw a bunch of legacy titles at Ray just to see what would happen.
And if I'm not mistaken, you started with the hardest stuff, right? You're like, totally stuff you know is going to be a problem.
Yeah, we knew that we were going to get some fun stuff back, and we did.
Yeah.
Some of it was surprisingly matched up surprisingly well. Like say maybe 80%, but there was a 20% that we really started digging into, one in particular,
Yeah.
where it was clear this was our data that we had sent out into the world, and it was coming back to us in a very different way. So trying to figure out what is the authoritative source, we think we really should be,
Yep.
but we also know that that's not the way metadata works in the music world, that metadata gets changed on different platforms, and the flow of data is mostly one way. It doesn't go back, so.
So we have an element within Ray we call SEAM, or a source and element authority matrix. And what we do is we weight all of the sources as they're coming in between 0 and 1. For example, like a PRO is going to score high with publishing information, but not so much with the recording information, if any were given, like an artist or a track title. In the case of CD Baby, they represent the source of the data. And so when there is a discrepancy in what Ray has provided consensus around, that CD Baby weight is applied with their choice of which, it could be within their internal systems, it could go back to the artists themselves, but that weight is then applied and then balanced out against the other sources within that. It's been really cool to see just how quickly we can go through millions of tracks of information and really provide cleaner, more enhanced data within that.
Yeah, and back to your point about that the human element is really important in this process. What it's helping us do is look at the metadata that's good enough, that meets the standards for Apple, Spotify, whomever else, it's clean. But then we can get that smaller subset of data and have some more human interaction with it, and maybe go back to the client, maybe go to Apple and ask, how did it get into this state? So, yeah.
Cool, thank you. And it's been neat for CD Baby to throw us, it's about that time. Cool, well, I won't go into classical. Just know we really like classical data, and we can clean up data. Cool. All right, well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody, while we make the set change here. My name is John Rasso. I'm the Senior Vice President of Client Services for the Harry Fox Agency and Rumblefish. And I'm here to talk about a specific case study with our good friend and client, Daryl Barentine. I'm stumbling over your name. From LyricFind, the CEO.
Thanks, Jane Rosso.
Thank you. I'm being pushed away here, so.
No.
Start over.
Here, continue.
Got it. Okay.
It's rebooting.
And the computer's rebooting. So maybe we won't have slides, but we've done this a long time. So I'll just sort of wing it until this pops up. So HFA, or the Harry Fox Agency, has been around for over 90 years. We're an outgrowth of Section 115, in which the mechanical right was created in the United States. And as a result, we've been building a database for over 90 years, populated solely with HFA publisher members, affiliates, provided to us over that time. And around 1972, we created a massive IBM database of all of that information, and have been issuing mechanical licenses for that entire time. Around, of course, the turn of this past century, we had moved into a world where music became digital, and we began building storing a database of ISRCs to compositions, with knowing at some point in the future that would be an incredibly valuable asset. There we go. Cool. Thank you. And I was actually speaking to Daryl, it is, right? Earlier. And it realized that he's actually one of the first customers to utilize our database for something besides traditional mechanical licensing. Our history has, there's thousands of record labels that came to us as a single source for publishing information for those rights. And so one of the things I actually wanted to ask you, Daryl, is a brief history of LyricFind that essentially led you to our doorstep.
How we got together, how did we meet? So if we go all the way back to 2004, late 2004, we were essentially restarting LyricFind because we tried in 2000 and 2001 to get licensing and failed. Came back to it in 2004 as an aggregator to try to license all the other services that are out there. We realized that publishing licensing and lyric licensing in particular was a gigantic pain in the ass, and it was an administrative nightmare. So we started looking for partners who could help us to aggregate those licenses and who could bring everything together into a single source. And we talked to various different partners, we talked to publishers directly, and we realized that we were 2.5 people living with our parents still after just graduating university with no funding or any real money other than a little bit of a loan from my mother. And we could definitely not do this on our own. That eventually led us to Lauren Apolito, who is still at HFA now and who completely bought into our idea of the fact that they were representing publishers already for mechanical rights. The ownership splits were the same. The system to process it would be the same. All they needed to do was some small modifications to their system to have lyrics be just another line item on those royalty statements. So Lauren really believed in what we were doing and what our vision for efficiency was in that. And a short period after that, we had a licensing deal done. HFA literally stuffed envelopes to get opt-in notifications out to thousands and thousands and thousands of publishers to tell them that they should participate in this lyric licensing deal. So that was, I looked it up, I did find it was 2006 when we did
14, 15 years.
that deal. Yeah, so we're in year 13, 14 of working together, and it started off then as just U.S. licensing and a very different data system than it is now, but it's grown a lot.
Yeah. So with conversations like that with Daryl and other companies, we realized the value and the extension of the database. And this graphic here sort of shows the connection of we have our clients out here on the left and our connection to the publishing music community. And what started as stuffing envelopes, we now have a full technological suite. Most of you, particularly music publishers who have access to an HFA online account, you're able to register your compositions, but you're also offered things through our agreements portal, where we have a lot of non-115 mechanical rights offerings, lyrics. We have a YouTube content ID administration. We do background music and various other sources where we now are able to offer, essentially be a business development team for your catalogs. And you've even expanded into merchandising at this point too.
Yeah, we did an additional opt-in for the Lyric Merch merchandising program. We've expanded from just being U.S. to handling 200 countries. Basically every country around the world through our HFA implementation. Obviously, the technological flow has changed a lot. So everything has huge changes.
The turnaround time has been increased greatly. I'm going to try to, because we're tight on time, to see if I could squeeze ahead here to the sort of the way we our data exchange protocols here. So there we go. Okay. So ultimately, what the services we provide is we start with Lyric Find sends us. We start with the opt-in opportunity, right? So we have a group of publishers that you've either negotiated agreements with directly or through going through our opt-in portal, and that creates an agreement. An agreement code in our system, which we then know which publishers are participating in through either the direct opt-in into our system or through a deal matrix that you provide to us.
Yeah, and we have many different configurations for the deal. We have U.S. only, and we have worldwide, and we have, you can either be in merch or not. We've had other iterations in the past. So I think we've now narrowed it down to those three, but obviously over 14 years and deals changing along the way, there's been historical management of different deal codes and different structures that have overstayed their welcome in the past, and we've since cleaned that up.
So we've actually, the interface now also includes dependencies on knowing that if you're participating in one publisher, you're unable to participate in another. You have an opportunity to move from one agreement to another, and it all follows the rules that are set to us by our clients. And that's one of the flexibilities we really have in our system is we are not the negotiator of the direct deal in any way. We are simply making operational whatever deal that you have in place, and that's actually one of the great challenges we have is, these ideas move faster than the marketplace sometimes, or to stay ahead of the marketplace, and so we've developed a working relationship in which we are able to adapt pretty quickly.
Yeah, with merch in particular, it was a different structure than other things that we had done, and even historically in the past, we looked at different types of licensing models. So early on in our history, publishers could opt in to specific licensing models. They could agree to subscription-based licensing, but not device-based licensing. They could agree to per-display licensing, but not permanent downloads. And fortunately, over the course of a while and learning from it, everybody was just in everything or they were in nothing. So we were able to simplify that a lot, but the system supported it.
And so now that the agreements are in place, we have an almost daily exchange where, as the example here is showing, is they provide to us a list of the lyric IDs, their internal lyric ID, titles, writers sometimes, and then that is hit against our database in which we return a response file to let them know, okay, of these songs, these are songs that are actually within the publisher catalogs that we have registered in our database, and therefore are able to participate and be used in your service for royalty collection.
Yeah, every day, literally, our content team is sending off all the new lyrics that are generated. They go directly into the HFA system, and we get a response back of what's licensed.
And frequently, this gets pretty granular to a point where a publisher's in a deal, but there's a particular writer that needs to be excluded, and so it really gets. Our job is to essentially enforce the restrictions of a lot of your agreements too. So let me move. I know we're tight here, so. So we do the back and forth. We send a license response file to them that lets them know what deals are what percentages are covered in their deals as well too. In the Lyric Find case, particularly, we also there's a royalty element to it as well. Some cases those deals result in direct payments, but most of them actually result in we do a royalty calculation based on the usage that's returned to us against those original IDs. In the case of Lyric Find being such a unique rate, you guys actually do your own royalty collection calculation, and then you pass back that information to HFA, and we in turn turn that into an invoice, and we do that royalty distribution and push it out quarterly through our statement portal. In an HFA format, which is it normalizes that all the different royalties that go through Rumblefish and HFA are in the exact same format that publishers are already capable of ingesting, and things like Counterpoint are able to ingest those files in a format, and we include the various different use sources on each one of those as well too.
And one of the things that you guys added a little while ago, it feels like it was recently, but I think it was actually like 4 or 5 years ago, was processing direct advances too, and being able to manage that for us, because that was something that would come up where publishers would want a little bit of an advance, but we didn't want to deal with them directly. And now we can still have that and give that to them and put that on file through HFA and have it managed by you.
And basically the way that works is we, at the beginning of one of those deals, we have a dollar amount that is put against the payment account for each one of those clients, and we continue to do a quarterly recoupment against those going forward. And the reason we picked LyricFine as the example here, it's sort of very outside the box of the traditional business you probably know us for as, as doing the royalties for, Spotify and Apple and 7 Digital, which is a straight up 115, and that's purely an ISRC and composition matching and invoicing process. And so we've been able to expand the knowledge of that data to a lot broader deals as well. It's time to wrap up over here. So thanks everybody for your time.
Thank you so much. We are going to try to do a quick changeover.
Sorry, I got a little bit.
And all those people, because classical music is so important, and especially in metadata, all those people who clapped and said they wanted to talk about classical should definitely go find the Exactuals and CD Baby team to talk about that. But we'll thank you guys so much for doing this.